going to use a small pile of Ubiquiti hardware and 3D printed parts to upgrade the network infrastructure in Mandic Labs 2.0. My Prusa Print Farm has been running reliably for months now, getting me through project after project, but it's been running on Wi-Fi. Once I get all of these 3D printers up and running, as well as all the other tech that's in my studio, Wi-Fi congestion is going to start to be a problem. I mean, this rack that I custom built, it's solidly bolted to a concrete wall. It's not going anywhere. I don't need wireless connectivity for my farm, so why not reduce my Wi-Fi noise? In fact, this was always the plan. Ubiquiti sent over a small pile of networking hardware and a couple of security cameras for the studio forever ago at this point. I'm going to be able to network both printer setups with only PoE power, so simple as it's going to get, and add a little more security to the studio while we're doing it. Of course, this hardware needs a home, so it's a good thing that last year I designed Mod10, a 3D printable modular 10-inch mini server rack for your home lab and networking needs. The original unit has been running the day-to-day operations at Blackthorn Tattoo, Ruby's studio. Since I released it, it's been one of the best received designs I've put out, and I've seen some excellent builds by community members that have really been inspiring. There's also been suggestions for changes and updates that could be made. I've implemented a couple of them, but I have a few more I want to show you here. A common request was for side panels that aren't solid. So I jumped into Autodesk Fusion and I designed up some skeletonized panels that allow for a little more airflow, maybe passing wires through, zip tying things to them, whatever you may want to have open side panels for. Some folks also noted that the top and bottom crossmembers of the design that hold the sides together was a little bit of dead space. So in comes the keystone jack crossmember. This allows you to use that dead space of the crossmember for keystone jacks for your RJ45 cables, USB, whatever you might want to pass through. But a big update that I'm releasing right now with this video is different rack unit sizes. Originally, Mod10 was limited to 2U increments, 2 rack units. The top and bottom panels and the modular midsection panels were all in 2U. So your minimum size, the smallest Mod10 you could build, was 4U. I'm now releasing 1U top and bottom pieces and modular sections. That means the minimum size that we'll be able to build for a Mod10 now is 2U, and you can expand by 1U increments. I've got one more huge update that folks have been asking for since day one. We'll talk about that when we get to building the second rack though. For now, I gotta get parts printed. As always, my trusty and reliable Prusa Print Farm sees me through pumping out production parts from my own pieces and prototyping the stuff for the upgrades and modifications I've been making. A 2U rack for this particular application anyway is kind of silly. I'm just mounting up the USW Ultra in the front of this with a patch panel on the front and one on the back to get the cables from the switch to the back of the rack. But I mean, come on, it's also adorable fun, and I have to test my own configuration for the new 2U build, so why not? Time to get it set up for my print farm. I was hopeful the Mod10 would rest on this ledge above the concrete. However, it's not a big enough shelf, so I have to hang off the edge a little bit. So in comes yet another pair of 3D prints. I designed up these brackets that will support the Mod10 and mount to the metal channel. That's where the metal building meets the concrete. The Mod10 will straddle onto these brackets and onto the metal, so I'm only putting one screw in each bracket. And then the rack can find its new home. I'm pretty happy with my rack location, but I don't want to run 9 network cables, one to each of the printers in this farm. So that's where these come in. Unify Flex Minis. These are gigabit switches that are PoE powered and then can provide network connection to 4 devices. I designed up yet another 3D print a straddle clamp that clips onto the Flex Mini, and then I can mount one underneath each of my shelves. So the 3 printers per shelf will go to their own Flex Mini on each shelf, and then I'll only have to run 3 network cables instead of 12. I'm not going to bore you by terminating the entire network setup all the way from my server rack to the Mod10. Suffice it to say, some Cat6 cable made its way across and got things connected. With our first mini rack up and running, before we get to building the second one with the big update yet to come, let's get an eye in the sky and add some security. I'm going to be mounting up this Ubiquiti G5 camera, but me being me, I had to jump into Autodesk Fusion and design up an adapter that I could 3D print for it. It's a super simple circle adapter with a pair of screw mounting holes for the Ubiquiti screw plate and a single screw hole in the middle for mounting. I sent that part over to one of the Core 1s and printed it up. A couple of heat press inserts into that. I can use a self-tapping screw to mount it to the steel post. A network cable that I can position the camera. The other end of that cable is going to the Mod10. As the USW Ultra can supply PoE power, this is one of the reasons I chose it. It'll be able to power both the mini switches for the rack and also a couple of security cameras. With all that connected, I now have a security camera on my shop door and my office door, covering the only entryways into this space. That said, I do have other cameras in other positions. I'm just not going to show the world where all of them are. You get to see this one. What you do get to see is me building another mini server rack. We got one more Mod10 to build for the pallet rack print farm, and I want to set it up with that new big update. Okay, what is the big update? It's actually a relatively small piece, but it addresses the biggest complaint folks had when I first released Mod10, and that is that I chose to use server rack cage nuts for the hardware to assemble the entire mini rack. I still stand by that choice. They are relatively inexpensive for what they are. Many home lab folks already have them. They allow for a little bit of misalignment, so if you're using somebody else's parts to mount to this, holes don't have to line up perfectly. But I understand they can hurt fingers and not everybody loves them. So in comes the M6 adapter inserts. These are snap-in retainers that hold an M6 hex nut, so you don't have to use cage nuts at all anymore. Initially, I started redesigning the entire main body of Mod10 to accept hex nuts instead of cage nuts, but then I quickly realized that it was a lot easier to make a snap-in insert. Positively clicks into the cage nut opening and tightly retains an M6 nut into the back of it. I recommend putting a screw into the nut to make it easier to push in. I printed prototype pieces in Polymaker ASA, Prusament ASA, and Prusament PETG, and my tolerances were all right where I wanted them to be each time. Your results may vary though. If your machine's not extruding right or your materials shrink funny, they might not fit exactly as I intend. These are just over 1 gram each, and they take single digits worth of time to print on my machines. So you're really not adding much in the way of time or materials, and you can convert an existing Mod10 rack. If you've already printed the parts, you have one you want to swap over, you can use these and update it to the M6 hex nuts if you want. With that momentous announcement out of the way, let's talk about the actual build we're putting together here. This is the first 3U configuration build, and it does have some different hardware than our previous one. It's using the same USW Ultra PoE switch, which will again power individual shelf Flex Mini switches for my 3D printers. The second switch is a Flex 2.5 gig. I wanted higher speed throughput for my streaming PC and a second PC that I'm going to put on this wall in an upcoming workbench project. The last piece of tech we're cramming in is a Raspberry Pi 5. This has a WaveShare PoE NVMe hat on it, so I'll be booting off of an SSD for reliability and speed, though that's not as big of a deal, as this is going to be the brains of my home assistant setup for the studio. I wasn't thrilled with my last configuration, so I wanted to give another go at this setup. To that end, I also picked up the Home Assistant Connect antennas, the official ones, to get all the protocols that I want in this space for all of my automation needs. But that's probably a future project. Let me know in the comments if you want to see a video about how I set up automations in this space. And with that, the first Mod10 3U build is complete. I have all the connectivity I could want for this wall, plus some, and a Home Assistant setup coming in the future. So let's get this thing up on the shelf where it's going to live and wrap this up. I am thrilled with the way this has turned out and the updates that have been made to Mod10 since I released it just over a year ago. Community involvement and acceptance of the project has been excellent, and I love to see it. You can find all of the updated design files that I showed you in this video and everything that's come out in the past year at the links in the description, and maybe build one of these 3D printable mini server racks for yourself. I need to say a big thank you to Prusa Research for sponsoring this video, PCBWay for being a studio sponsor who helps to keep the lights on around here, and you folks for watching along. You can find links to the description to those sponsors. Help support them so they continue to support what it is we do here. My studio is coming together piece by piece, step by step, and mini rack by mini rack. I hope you folks find videos like this interesting. I'd love to hear in the comments what you thought about this project or Mod10 in general. Have you built one and you love it? Love to hear about it. Get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. All right, folks, see you in the next one.